So, welcome back to the HubScale podcast, where we dive into the minds of security leaders all around the world. So, this week we have not only one but two very special guests with us. So, we have Pamela Golden, who's the VP of People, and John McCarthy, who's the Global VP of Sales, both at Panther AI. So, Panther AI is a Series B SIM platform which has seen impressive growth since being founded in 2018. So, welcome to the podcast, guys. A pleasure, everyone.
Thanks, James. It's great to see you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really happy to be here.
No, likewise. Yeah, I'm very excited to get cracking. So, for the listeners who don't really know who you guys are, would you like to introduce yourselves? I'm guessing we'll start off with Pamela.
Sure. Thanks so much. So I'm Pamela Golden, the VP of People, as you mentioned, at Panther. I've been there for about 2 years, been in the HR function for many years before that. I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts.
Nice. What about
That-
yourself, John?
Yeah, so John McCarthy, VP of Global Sales here at Panther. I've been here for only 2 months now, but been in the industry a long time. Started at Checkpoint Software in New York City, then worked at Salesforce for a while. In the past 6 years, I was at Tanium out in San Francisco.
Perfect, lovely. So, yeah, for the podcast today, we want to cover off a couple of different topics. However, what I thought would be good is just to give you guys the opportunity to kind of introduce Panther to the listeners who don't really know what you guys do.
Yeah, so I'll take that piece. James mentioned we are a SIM, right? So for those who aren't familiar, that stands for Security Information and Event Management, right? The market leader would be Splunk. Our founder and CTO, Jack Naglieri, he developed Panther after using traditional SIMs as a practitioner, both at Yahoo and then Airbnb. And he went down this path because he was not satisfied with the status quo and the way the traditional SIMs operated it, and he knew there was a better way to do it. So our platform is native on AWS and Snowflake, and it's really like the preferred SIM of engineering-focused security teams. And these folks, to frame it, these are people who want complete control over their infrastructure. They want granular visibility across the environment. They want high-fidelity, clean data, and they want the flexibility within their SIM to be able to achieve that. And Panther transforms noisy cloud logs. There's a lot of alerts out there, and we transform that noise into security signals with code-driven detection and response at petabyte scale. And we can do this without the overhead and cost of traditional SIMs, plus really great support. And some of the key differentiators at Panther in the technology are our CI/CD, detection as code, and highly customizable log ingestion sources. And we've got a lot of really exciting things on the roadmap as well. So that's sort of like the high level overview of what's new and different and special about Panther compared to your run of the mill traditional SIM.
No, I love that. No, yeah, it seems like a very exciting year for especially the kind of SIM market as well. So yeah, really excited to see what Panther and you guys got in store. Great. So yeah, the first topic we kind of wanted to cover is career pivots. Obviously, like you mentioned, both of you had quite an interesting background. I know, Pamela, you were quite big into marketing and now you're into HR. Whilst I know, John, obviously you were in kind of publishing beverages, now shifting over to cybersecurity. So yeah, I thought it'd be good just to kind of find out a bit more about your guys' journeys and what's kind of brought you to cybersecurity. So yeah, kind of start off with you, Pamela. What's been like the kind of main motivation for you to career pivot for you?
Yeah, I love the way you're framing that, because for me, so much of it is about motivation. So
Yeah.
I'm personally deeply driven by two things. One is learning, and another is impact. So although I've made a number of transitions, meaningful industry level transitions across my career, it's all been in search of increasing my growth and ensuring that I'm doing everything I can to grow my impact. So if we go way back to when I just completed business school, I went to a rotational development program at Chevron, which was an unusual choice for me. I did not see myself as a big oil kind of gal. But what I loved about it was there was this rotational development program that was going to allow me to try on many different kinds of roles within marketing. So I was working on a 25-year downstream strategy in Singapore. And then 6 months later, I was working in a gas station in downtown San Francisco as the manager. So it was a really wide variety of experiences. And honestly, one of the things I learned from that is that I was that strange person who in those days we all had Blackberries who they'd ask somebody to do interviews and help out with recruiting, and everybody else would find their Blackberries to be suddenly extraordinarily interesting. And I was like, I'll do that. I'll help out with that. So I found myself continually pulled towards the people space. So when I left
Mm.
Chevron, it was to grow and learn, and I actually went and did executive search for a while. And then while I was there, I did a pivot within the company to focus on understanding organizational culture, consulting with companies on organizational cultural fit between
Mm.
individuals and executives, because that is highly predictive of executive success. From there, I went on to Google, which was a bit of a pivot in the sense that it was a big tech company, but because the space I'd been working in executive search was almost exclusively tech, it made sense. So I was building on, carrying forward that industry knowledge, but finding a new way to apply my learning and drive impact. And then when the opportunity at Panther came up,
Mm.
it was a great fit for me. It was a company that had a very nascent people function that
Mm.
presented kind of a blank slate for me to help bring a vision to life in partnership with the CEO and the rest of the executive team.
Okay, perfect, nice. Yeah, what about yourself, John? Like I said, you had a quite an interesting start to the career, but now you feel like you really excelled in the cyber. So what's been your kind of like main motivation to be where you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've sort of figured it out on the way, right? Going into college, I went to Boston College. I was a political science major, and I always had ambitions to get into politics. And
Mm.
my freshman year was the Bush versus Gore election, where Gore won the popular vote. State of Florida with Bush's brother flipped to be Bush, and I was sort of disillusioned with the whole political scene. So I changed my major to communications, and I studied primarily sales and marketing.
Mm.
And my goal was to get into media and entertainment, because those were my passions: sports, movies, music, etc. Like a lot of folks and younger people. And I had the pleasure of, during college, having summer internships at MTV Networks in Times Square, which was really cool. And then my first job out of college was in publishing. So I worked for Time Inc. In Rockefeller Center, and I actually sold copies of print magazines. So Sports Illustrated, People, Time, Entertainment Weekly, InStyle. And I would be calling on large chains like Walmart, Target, CVS, Walgreens, supermarkets in the Northeast, running special promotionals for whoever would win the Super Bowl or the World Series, the swimsuit issue, presidential elections. And it was really cool. And I did that for almost 6 years. And when I went to work at Time Inc., I loved publishing and media and print. And I had no inclination to do anything different. But 6 years into the job, it became clear that print media was a dying business, right? So in 2004, it was really a really great place to be. 6 years later, things were moving online, and I wasn't in ad sales; I was in print sales.
Yeah.
So I I knew that I needed to do something else, but I was young, and I've always been very entrepreneurial. So I looked at starting a small business. Went through a few different business plans for various different businesses. I had a friend who was a home brewer, and he persuaded me that New Jersey had the least amount of breweries per capita in the U.S., and we should start a microbrewery. So we got an SBA loan from the government. A couple friends I knew who were more career driven at the time, who were lawyers and bankers, etc., invested in us. And we started a microbrewery, and
Mm.
I did that for 3 years. It was incredibly fulfilling emotionally, and I learned a ton. Right, I kind of look at it as almost like an MBA on the streets.
Yeah.
And 3 years in, we got a lot of great press. We got a lot of big accounts and distribution across New Jersey, Philadelphia, New York, and we got some investment, specifically from a large real estate developer who became our chairman, and it was an incredible experience for me. But after 3 years of doing that, I knew I wanted to kind of, similar to Pamela, learn and grow. Right, there wasn't much else for me to do. I had stood up and ran a microbrewery for 3 years, and essentially brought it to success, building out a team, reporting back to the investors, etc. So I wanted to not repeat, the mistake I made out of college, which was going to a stagnant or dying industry, and go somewhere growing. So the obvious place was technology, right? But I had no tech experience, and getting a job at the consumer-based tech, or the places that the average folk are familiar with, Apple, Google, etc., like everyone's applying to those jobs. So I tried to get a little bit creative and figure out where could I go that's, your average Joe isn't just applying to a job, so I have a shot. And I've always been really interested in cybersecurity and hacking and all those things. Not that I was knowledgeable about it, but it always fascinated me. So I decided to target the cybersecurity industry. And I was really fortunate. I was able to, through some personal connections I had, get a shot to interview at Checkpoint Software. Checkpoint, their founder and CEO, he's moving into a chairman role, but Gil Schwed, first invented the first firewall with stateful inspection, invented the first VPN network. So it was a really strong player in the industry, and I took a couple months of interviews and figuring out the right fit, but eventually I was given a shot to come into Checkpoint. And that was how I learned the ropes about being a cybersecurity sales professional. So worked at Checkpoint for 3 years in New York, made a lot of great friends, a lot of great customers and colleagues, and learned a ton, and really became passionate about it. A lot of the folks on the teams that I've led recently always ask me, how do you become a great sales professional? And one thing I tell them is, you have to take your profession and also make it your hobby, right? So at night, instead of watching Sports Center or a movie or whatever you're going to do, like, do industry research, read blogs, read articles, learn more, right? So I became really passionate about the industry during my time at Checkpoint. And then my wife and I decided to move out to San Francisco. She's a marketing leader at Yelp, and she had an opportunity to move into a larger role if we left New York and went to San Francisco. And I was supportive, and I got a transfer at Checkpoint from New York to San Francisco. And then once I got to San Francisco, I got sort of really interested in expanding my horizons and my skill set and learning more. And I figured, why not learn the SaaS business? And if you're going to learn SaaS and sales, like, where better than Salesforce? So I made my way over to Salesforce. I did that for 3 years, and it's an incredible organization, and they have it really figured out on what great process and structure and the day-to-day behaviors of great sales hygiene looks like. And the 3 years I spent there was a real education in what great looks like at a sales organization. And I did that for 3 years, and I found my way to Tanium because, again, being in the Bay, got very interested and started knowing folks in startups. And I really wanted to have that experience where, even though I was an account executive, essentially, I got to have an impact on the fate of the organization, right? So Tanium was a good fit for me because it was cybersecurity. It was small and growing, and I wanted to get back into the cyber world, and I wanted to be at a startup. So joined Tanium when we had a couple hundred people, and was there for 6 years, right? Did some very exciting strategic deals with big organizations, learned a ton about the complete depth and with of what good IT operations and cybersecurity looks like. And the past 2 years, I had the opportunity to build out a new segment for Tanium as the VP of the West, which was incredibly fulfilling and exciting for me. And then, our current CEO, Will, reached out to me on LinkedIn, and while I wasn't looking to leave Tanium because it was an incredibly special home for me for 6 years, the opportunity to come in at Panther and lead the vision of the global sales organization and up level my game again, right? Where I participate in board meetings instead of just advising on them, and really lead the strategy and vision was very exciting to me. And then there's an inflection point, right, in the SIM market. Splunk acquired by Cisco, Sumo acquired by Francisco Partners, and I spoke to a lot of executives whose companies use Panther. The technology's legit. I really like the team, the executive team at Panther and the board, and it seemed like a really perfect place for me to take the next step on my journey. So long story, I rambled a bit here, but I think we got the nuts and bolts of it, and that's sort of the path that's gotten me to this podcast.
Yeah.
John, there's one like thing in your story that I want to call out where we have sort of an interesting parallel. You talked about moving from New York to San Francisco to support your wife's career, which is fantastic. I love that. Similarly, I actually moved from the Bay Area to Boston to support my husband's career. And just like that triggered a move for you to Salesforce. I was able to stay at Google, but that caused me to transition from a role where I was leading a team of recruiters to a role where I was acting as an HR partner. So while it wasn't necessarily a move that on paper looked like something that supported or enabled my career, I took advantage of the opportunity of a change to look around and see, how can I build new skills? What can I learn now that I'm here? And I think that's something that I'd love to call out that I heard is being opportunistic and reflecting on where are there opportunities for growth where on paper it doesn't necessarily look like it's going to lead to growth explicitly.
Yeah, and like to piggyback on that, I have a lot of friends, right, close friends and not so close friends, who reach out for career advice and whatnot, and I always explain to them that it's never too late to change your career and to change your job and do something different, right? You need to be hungry, you need to work hard, and you also need to be realistic, right? You need to understand what would you like to do next, and like what's the path of least resistance to get there, right? So figuring out the way in and the way to head towards what you want the future state to be is really critical.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's in many ways what executive search was for me, because I found myself drawn towards the HR side of the house. I had an MBA, I'd worked in strategy, I'd worked in marketing, but I had no recruiting, no HR experience. And people were like, oh, obviously the place for you is executive search. And so I went, and that was able to give me this foundation and this credibility of having HR consulting expertise and grow into an HR generalist.
No, I love that. Like I say, it's been two incredible journeys. Who would have thought that one person managing a gas station and one person managing a brewery, and I would be leaders at a cybersecurity startup? So the one kind of question I wanted to understand is, obviously in the positions today, throughout your kind of career, especially, what would you say like the most transferable skills you've gained from each industry that's helped you be so successful or in the places that you are today?
I could take that first. I mean, sales is sales, right? Like selling magazines or beer or firewalls or CRM or SIM, or what I did at Tanium, right? It's identifying your customer, your prospect. It's positioning the value of your product, why it's a good fit, why it works for that business or person, right? And why it's better than other things that they're either currently using or exploring to use, right? So, obviously there's nuances to the product, right? Especially when you get into technology and even more so in cybersecurity. But, it's really about, being a trusted advisor and like, a partner with your customers and your prospects. And, nobody wants to be sold. No one wants to be pushed. They want to have the information provided to them in a consumable way, and like they want you to help guide them on their decision, right? And sometimes that decision is not to purchase your product, and that's okay,
Mhm.
right? So that's a pretty easy answer, I think, from my perspective as a person in sales.
Yeah. For me, I would say an unexpected transferable skill was there was a time at Chevron where I was doing corporate venture capital. So I was looking to form strategic partnerships, but also take financial stakes in companies. And one of the things I learned there was that you're assessing the technology, but in parallel with that, you're very much assessing the executive team. And you're saying, are these people leaders that I believe in? Do I believe that they'll be able to execute the vision? Because if the product is phenomenal and the team sucks, do not
Mm.
make that investment, right? And so then that was something that going into executive search, it helped me understand every hire is so critical. It's part of why I'm so excited John's here. Um, but it helped. So from there, I'd say that I had that foundation in Chevron of understanding the criticality of an effective executive team. Then when I went into executive search, I looked at that more from an individual side and looked at assessing the capabilities of an individual. Are they a fit? Are they going to be effective in this context? Then pivoting into HR, thinking about how can I help enable and support this leader and executive to be as effective as possible? How can I help them up level their team to deliver performance at the company level? So I
Mm.
would say what used to be a sort of an evaluative criteria for me when I was thinking about investments has become kind of the linchpin of a lot of what I spend my time thinking about.
Perfect. No, that's great. I know I love that as well. And I know we've kind of touched on a few areas, but I just wanted to fully understand. So I know you mentioned, John, you had a few friends reach out to you asking kind of advice for this, but if you had to kind of say what would be the main two pieces of advice you would give someone who is actually thinking of changing their career or changing their kind of industry?
Yeah, so I'll give a specific example. I have my wife and I have a pair of good friends. The woman went to college with my wife in Boulder, and they've had a really interesting journey and career path, and they currently run their own hard seltzer company in Barcelona, and they have two little
Mm.
boys, and they live there. And the woman reached out to me recently and was, just looking for some guidance. Hey, I'm thinking about getting back into the corporate world. What do you think? And I said, you need to really look at an opportunity that aligns to your prior experience, right? She did sales for a big ski company early in her career. They actually founded and ran a marijuana farm in California, obviously a legal one, right? It's a real business. They sold it. Now they do a the seltzer company. And I've my guidance to her was like, you're not going to be able to go get an account executive job at a tech company, right? But like you can go get an account executive job at Burton Snowboards because you
Mm.
have that history, or at Heineken, right? Because you've got similar skills. Or if you do want to get in technology, like you need to come in in a more junior level, right? You can get an SDR or BDR job. And some of the folks here at Panther in that role are second career folks, right? We have people who used to be school teachers and other things, because it's never too late to change your path. You just need to be realistic about what your experience is, and like how's the quickest path for you to get to where you want to go, right?
Mm. No, I love that. What would you say, Pamela, for your kind of experience as well?
For me, if when I'm encouraging people to think about transitions and career changes, I always like to give the advice to think about what was a career best for you. And you're not necessarily trying to go backwards and recapture that, but figure out what was it that combined to make that really your career best? Was it the team that you were on? Was it the industry that you were in? Was it the function that you were working in? So figure out what really drives you, motivates you, and helps you perform at your best, and use that to orient your search, because you can transition John was talking about, you can apply your skills in adjacent industries or different sectors, but really understanding what your strengths are and what enables you to perform at your peak is really critical for job satisfaction as well as growth.
No, I love that. Yeah, some really good points there, which hopefully the listeners can take away really well. So the kind of second topic that we wanted to touch upon is almost kind of building out a diverse team. But before I kind of get involved there, I just want to understand from both your sides, what does diversity kind of mean in the workplace from you two?
So I can jump in on this one because this is a place I have a lot of passion. So
Yeah.
for me, a diverse team is one that incorporates a wide variety of viewpoints and skill sets, backgrounds, and experiences. And a lot of time, the way that you do that, the most direct and effective way to do that is to look across lines of difference of gender, lines of difference of race, socioeconomic status, languages spoken in the home. There are many different measures you can use of difference, and thinking, how do you build a team that has as many unique perspectives as possible, for me, is what diversity is all about.
Yeah, I mean, diverse experiences and cultures are sort of paramount to like my whole existence. I haven't been to Manchester, but London is one of my favorite cities. New York, I think, is the best city in the Western Hemisphere. It's got the most different people from all around the world at different levels of everything, and it's a very special place, right? That's where the ideas are generated. I grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is a big city with people from all different backgrounds and socioeconomic class, et cetera. And like my wife and I are choosing to raise our children in Berkeley, California, which is another fairly large and diverse city. So it's something that's been paramount to everything that I value and that I glean to be fulfilling and exciting and innovative. And it's really critical just to bring those values that you have off the field, like onto the court or into the office, if you will, and try to as best you can, compile teams that are representative of the global community in all aspects. Now, frankly, that does get challenging, specifically in cybersecurity, right? But like, as long as you're like working towards that and making every effort you can, then you make progress over time, and eventually we'll get there.
No, perfect. Love that. And probably just say for all the Northerners watching as well that Manchester is a much better city than London, John, but we'll take your word for it. So a big question, I feel like one of the main part of this topic is, how would you guys kind of promote diversity specifically in the workplace?
So for me, you can't really promote diversity until you have a diverse workforce. So it starts at the beginning of the employee life cycle with building out the right team. So when you are working with a hiring manager, making sure that you're thinking critically about what are the skills that are required to do the role, and not taking lazy shortcuts and saying, well, why don't we get someone from who's been at Sumo or who's been at Splunk, because then you're going to be weighed down by sort of the legacy of the industry and the fact that cybersecurity typically has worse representation than even tech at large. So thinking about what are the critical transferable skill sets that you really need to hire for a role. Then building out your interview panels with intention. So making sure that the people who are going to be interviewing for your company are bringing their own diverse and unique perspectives, and it's not just everybody sort of looking the same. And one of the biggest things I'll push leaders on is, I've definitely heard people say, well, I want to hire someone who's like, like me, but 10 years ago. And it's like, no, like let's think about the role, and let's think about the skills and the capabilities, and then build a profile around that. So once you've put these steps in place to make it as likely as possible that you can attract diverse talent, hire that diverse talent, onboard it, and then it's really critical to set everyone who joins your company up for success. So figure out, what are the robust onboarding programs you need? If you have ERGs, how can you proactively connect people with individuals who have similar backgrounds, experiences, and identities? And then just trying to bake equity into everything you do from a people process perspective. Your performance reviews should have an equity check. Your approach to compensation planning should be as programmatic as possible to minimize bias and maximize equity. So for me, that's how you do everything you can to set your team up for being diverse and staying diverse.
Yeah, perfect. No, I really enjoyed that. And yeah, appreciate the time today from both of you. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure the listeners will too. So ultimately, the final question, which I wanted to finish with. So for both of you, if you could go back and give one piece of advice to 20-year-old John and Pamela, what would that one piece of advice be? So let's start off with you, Pamela. What would it be?
Well, there's the pragmatist in me is like buy Bitcoin early. But perhaps a more actionable thing to take away is be honest with yourself about what you love and what you're good at, and focus more on applying those skills than on achieving a specific or certain role that you think you might want to get into.
Perfect.
Yeah, I've got a more long-winded answer. You know, I like I said at the beginning of my path, like I really was interested in sports, entertainment, media, right? But I think, and this is guidance that I'm going to give my I have two little boys. This is guidance I'm going to give them as they get older. Some of my friends that I admire most have made careers in these industries on the business side, right? I have a friend who is at Creative Artists Agency because he loves movies, and like he does business strategy, and he gets to meet with Martin Scorsese and Michael Mann, right? I've got friends who are in the NFL on the business side, right? And I think as a kid growing up, I loved sports, I love music, I love movies. I'm not the talent, right? I wasn't going to be an athlete, I wasn't going to be a musician or an actor, but I would have loved to be given the guidance. Hey, you are really passionate about these things. There are people behind the scenes who like this is their life and that's their job, right? So I got a little bit of that as I worked at MTV and in publishing, but I don't think I really saw the vision clearly and understood, that you could have a very robust and successful career path in a field that is, sort of arts and entertainment when you're not the talent, right? So the advice I would give myself and any young people coming up is think about what you love and what makes you happy, and like there's very possibly a way for you to make that your profession.
No, perfect. No, I love that. So I really appreciate the time again, both of you. It's been a really good conversation, and yeah, really excited to see the path that Panther has, especially for 2024. So yeah, thank you very much, guys. It's been a great chat, and yeah, we'll hopefully connect soon.
Thanks,
Yeah, and James, if any of your listeners or anyone up in the north have complaints about their current sim, please send them our way.
Perfect. I'll attach your email address, so I'm sure I'll find a way to get to you.
Thanks,
Perfect.
James.
Perfect. Great. Thank you very much, guys.